Another Monday night, another week of AJ's analysis. It is your host, AJ Sabalski, here today, joined by Peter DiBiase from Built in Buffalo. Just ended his internship with Matt Perino and Ryan Talbot over at Syracuse.com. Has some exciting things in his final semester over at Providence. So if you are listening on audio, I appreciate all the downloads on audio. It's been a great experience for me to see all the active listeners each week. I'm enjoying AJ's analysis. And then if you're here live, make sure interact, ask questions, like the video on YouTube. That would be great. I greatly appreciate that. It helps the algorithm and get that more people to tune in. So all 14 of you in here right now, wherever you're watching, head over to YouTube, check it out, like, subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Jessica, how you doing today? So before we get started, Peter, how you doing today? How's life going?
I'm doing good. Just started my first day of classes for my final semester at school. So that was, I guess, not fun, but fun because I'm wrapping up school, but nobody likes going to class. But yeah, got a new internship starting Wednesday. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on, talking some Bills.
Yeah, let's do it. Lance, how are we doing tonight? We are doing good, my friend. Lance is Peter's co-host on his show, Buffalo Blitz, correct? On Tuesday nights on Buffalo?
Yeah, Tuesday nights, Bill and Buffalo, 8 o'clock.
Perfect. All right, let's jump into this Bills-Bears matchup. Obviously, Bills 24-21 win. The first team offense, first team defense, I think on both sides came out and proved some things on both ends of the ball. I think the defense had a really good 2 drives where they went 3 and out. The Bears. I'm still not sold on Justin Fields yet. I could probably have my own show about that, but I just don't. I just don't know if he's the guy for Chicago. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I thought the Bills played a really good game offensively with the first team. I thought Josh Allen looked good. I tweeted it earlier in the week. 1 drive, score a touchdown, get ready for Monday Night Football. That's exactly what happened, and that's what I'm happy that's what we saw after the performance from Pittsburgh a couple of weeks ago. Peter, just some of your overall thoughts about the game before we get into specifics. I always like asking just like the overall vibe or how you felt about the game going into it, how you feel now, after it.
I lost you for a second there. So
hello, are you there?
I'm there. I'm back.
Okay, I was asking you.
No, but you're asking me my thoughts about the Bears Bills game. Yes. So I didn't watch it live. I was moving my stuff back into college in my house, so I had to go back and I rewatched most of it, not all of it. It's preseason, so as much as I can take of it before I lose my mind. But yeah, I agree. Like you mentioned Justin Fields, and I agree. I don't know if he's going to be a fully competent pocket passer in his career, which is kind of hinders him. But if you're talking just on the Bills side, I think the Bills' first team offense and defense, they didn't need to make a statement because it's preseason and it's not like people lose their mind a little too much. But for, I guess, the national narrative and for, I guess, Bills fans' sanity for the next week and a half, I think they needed to be like, you know what, we're competent. We're okay. We're still a team that won 13 games last year. And look, Josh Allen, 5 for 7, 50 yards or 49 yards. Like, he was good, did his thing. Obviously, they punched in with Damian Harris. I think it was one of those games where you're like, McDermott wanted to see just 1 or 2 possessions where we looked normal and then we were good, and that's what we got. And I think people maybe take a deep breath. Like, you don't see on Twitter this week, I know it's Monday only, but people are freaking out about Bills-Bears game, even though there's still some things that are concerning, but because they won and they looked a little better. But I think it was an overall step in the right direction. But I said last week on my show, it's preseason. Like, I think everyone needs to take a deep breath and kind of just relax, because stuff in preseason doesn't matter. I tweeted the Texans went 3-0 last year, and the Texans were terrible. So it was a good step in the right direction. They did some good things. Like Darrington Evans' run was incredible, but that might be a guy that might not be on the roster by tomorrow. So you get those positives, but it might not even matter at all. That's why I don't take much stock in the preseason. Or even Ty Johnson's probably not going to be on the roster. You have that type of thing. But yeah, it was overall a good game, and nothing too much you can complain about.
Yeah, I want to start with, I think Gabe Davis, if you want to critique a little bit about him, he started the game a little rough, I think, on that second kind of drop or pass breakup where he had. Mm-hmm. I thought he could have came back to the ball and allowed broke away from the defender, went back to the ball and kind of hauled it in. And then on the first, it was like an RPO. Josh tried to fit it in. I think it was a good throw. kind of similar to that one that Allen threaded to Diggs, where Diggs caught it. And he thought he could maybe take it the distance, but got tripped up, and you could see his frustration. Probably means he wants to leave Buffalo. But anyway, Gabe, a couple tough drops. I would say more the first one than the second one. I think the second one was a really good play up by the defender. But I want to hear your thoughts. How confident are you in Gabe Davis going into the season from what you've seen? I know, like, training camp, I know I went to 5 of the practices, and he's looked really good. He's looked really dominant. They've lined him up all over the place. And then in the preseason as well, I thought he showed some signs, especially in that second game. Obviously, the throw that Josh had to Gabe on the sideline that got called back from the Spencer Brown holding penalty. Just your thoughts on Gabe Davis going into year 2. What do you expect from him? And is he a guy that can be kind of that 1-2 punch that most teams that are elite have?
I have huge expectations for Gabe Davis. I think he's going to have a great year. I think he's one of those guys where last year he came in with a ton of expectations coming off that 4-touchdown performance against the Chiefs in the divisional round. And I don't think he was ever the same after that injury. And I don't think it's an excuse that someone should be hindered throughout the whole year because of an ankle injury that happened in the first quarter of the season. But it definitely did affect him. And I think he can be that 1-2 punch. I think he will be. And what I've seen differently than what we saw last year, especially in camp and then into the regular season, from this year to last year, is that they're using him more. Like you mentioned, they're using him in different spots. You see a little more slant routes, short passes. He isn't just that go route guy, which I think kind of hinders him. And I think if you can use Gabe Davis in more facets of the game, then you become a better offense. And I think it puts a little less pressure on Gabe Davis that he doesn't always have to make the big play. He can make the 12-yard catch for the first down and move the chains like a Stephon Diggs. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of a consistent Gabe Davis. I don't know if we're going to see like those games where the Pittsburgh game was like 4 for 120 or whatever it was, 130. It was probably a little more than that. I don't have it off the top of my head.
I think it was like 180. I think it was like
something like that. I was at that game. I should know that. Obviously, it was mainly those 2 massive catches, and you still want those, but you also want him to be more consistent and just that every down receiver, not just that deep down. But I think he's going to be great this year. I think he's going to have a really good year. And I'm telling people, like in fantasy, I think Gabe Davis is that type of flex option. And a lot of teams in fantasy, like you can get him on the bench. Like he's like that's a great bench receiver to have in NFL because he's better than a bench receiver in fantasy. So I think he's going to have a great year.
Jessica with a great question: will Matt Perino's hair move in a hurricane? I don't think so.
No.
I think we both would know quite well. I don't think it's moving in a hurricane.
No, I think was it this year or oh no, when he had the shout episode back in, I think it was June, the one you were at with me. He showed up and it was pouring. And like and I knew I was like, oh, his hair's gonna get messed up. It was perfectly fine. It was all that stuff. I don't think his hair moves. Him and Ryan are totally 2 different opposites when it comes to hair. It's kind of funny. I love it.
Absolutely. Christopher in the comments, I think he can have a great year, especially if Kincaid has a good year and Diggs does Diggs. Yeah, it was funny. The interview at halftime or throughout the game and the Bears game, Cynthia Freeland asked Gabe, what's your favorite route to run? And Gabe like kind of thought, and I'm like, Gabe, if you don't say post right now, like if you don't say post route right now, you're lying. And he's like, I think I'm really good at the post route. And Diggs is kind of like the hitch guy. He can beat you anywhere from like 1 to 10 yards, but he can also stretch you out. So that's kind of the dynamic. I think Gabe is best when he's running those, deeper routes, but I also think it won't become like a consistent thing. But I think he will be able to be moved around more and get open and move the chains, like you said, Peter. I think he's a guy that can do that. I just don't know if he's been able to do that. I think the appearance of a slot receiver will really help if they can get that slot presence, that consistent slot presence in the middle. Can I hear no, I cannot, Peter.
I'm making sure.
Yeah. So anyway, let's move along here. I'm going through my first half kind of takeaways from the game, just kind of what I saw. Another player that's kind of surprised me, a guy that I think is a lock to make this roster at this point, is Quentin Morris. He had a great grab over the middle. He has some deficiencies in blocking, and a couple of people that cover one, they've mentioned to me that he is a redundancy kind of to Kincaid, where not the best blocker, but he has good wide receiver abilities. But you want your third, tight end to be a blocker or a pass catcher. I think with the release of Jay Sternberger on, I think yesterday, that kind of clarifies what they're going to do. I think Morris is their third tight end. Any thoughts on Morris? I know he's kind of that third tight end, and he's kind of a guy that's been buried in the depth chart, but I still think he can, maybe get a jersey if he can play a special teams role. Maybe just your thought on Quentin Morris and just the overall tight end room as a whole going into the season.
I think Quentin Morris, I think we saw flashes last year, a couple touchdowns in a couple games where he is a talented player. The problem with him, like you said, the blocking isn't there. And it's kind of hard for him to get any snaps. Like with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, there's really no avenue for him. So there is a chance he's one of those, makes the 53-man roster, and then on game day, one of the healthy inactives, which is totally fine because injuries happen. You never know. We could use him. And if he is your second tight end for a week, or if Knox misses a game, if Kincaid misses a game, I think that is okay. I think he's a very good third tight end. So I do think if you cut him, he's probably not coming back. I think if you cut him, he's not making it onto the practice squad. I just think there's too many teams that would probably, unless he's just not a household name enough, and maybe we just think he's bigger than he is, and that sometimes happens with your own players. But I think he's shown flashes enough in games where I think we could be tough to get him back on the practice squad. I think he's good. I think the tight end room is one of the best tight end rooms in football. Obviously, you have like Travis Kelce. He makes that tight end room the best tight end room in football. But when you talk about from your number one tight end to your number two tight end, the Bills have one of the best. So I love the tight end room. I love what they're going to do with Knox and Kincaid. I'm excited to see in a real game week 1 against the Jets. But if you're just thinking of Quentin Morris, he's a guy I think you kind of have to have on the roster because I do think if an injury happens, he's more than capable of filling in for either Knox or Kincaid. And we saw like what a Tommy Sweeney has done in the past, and it just hasn't been what to the level like I think Quentin Morris can do. Minus I think the blocking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he brings an element that may be used, but I think he might. There's kind of a good chance he's a healthy scratch on those game days, just because of the dominant 1-2 punch that I think the Bills could possibly have with Kincaid and Knox. I see a lot of. Go ahead.
I got a question for you. Like, let's say, God forbid, Knox misses a game or two, right? And you have to roll out Quentin Morris and Dalton Kincaid. That's an interesting blocking duo at the 10. So that's what are your thoughts on that? Like,
yeah, that's the issue, and
there's no blocking there.
Right, and that's the issue. That's kind of what a couple of people at Cover One told me. Yeah. They're not the biggest fans of Morris just because of that redundancy. So if they do have that, I mean, look, there's going to be some swing tackles on the market here in a couple of days. I know a plethora have already been released. A couple have been traded. I know Bobby Hart's a guy. I don't think they'll bring him back, but there's names like that out there that have that ability to be that swing tackle for them. But it's interesting. I'm not too worried about it. I think Kincaid and Morris do things in the receiving game that are good. I think Morris has shown like last in the Bears game, he had a couple nice blocks. It's not like he gets blown up every play. He's not like some total scrub that is legit only a receiver. Like he is a tight end for a reason. I think he can do things. Jessica makes a good point. And Gilliam is their fourth tight end. I think he can be, again, he's a guy that can line up. He can line up in line on the edge and make some nice blocks. So I
forgot about that.
Right. So that's also something they can add. But I want to get to Christian Kirksey real quick. I see a couple of comments about that. He was released by the Texans today. Obviously, 30 years old, might have lost a step. I thought last year he had a really good season, 3 sacks, a really good over 100 tackles. I think he's a guy that maybe he might be a little redundant to Milano, but just to bring in a guy with the ability to maybe help in the middle, in the linebacker room, maybe play a little bit of Mike linebacker, maybe be a rotational piece throughout the season. I think there is an option for that. And I think middle linebacker, it's not my biggest concern, but one of my major concerns going into the year. So your thoughts, Peter, do they go after one of these, like a Christian Kirksey? I know Trey Turner from the Chargers, got released today. Do they go after like a couple of guys like that and maybe add someone to this linebacker room?
You would think they would. I don't fully know. Like you have obviously the injury to Bale Inspector, so that puts in the depth. How much do they really want to trust AJ Klein to come out and have to play if need be? I don't, and I don't want that. And obviously the Terrell Dodson's play on the field hasn't been spectacular. You do have Terrell Bernard, who I think probably is that middle linebacker one, which is a crazy spot we're at right now. And if he pops, then all power to him. And if he's really good, then we got our middle linebacker for another 4 or 5 years and at a certain size that the Bills kind of targeted this offseason or kind of went away from with Tremaine Edmonds, not bringing back Tremaine Edmonds. But I'm still shocked they never brought that. I'm still shocked. I talked about this last week with Lance that Terrell Dodson was your veteran middle linebacker. It was kind of shocking. And I guess AJ Klein is, but I'm not going to put AJ Klein in the veteran middle linebacker that you want to trust. He's a guy, if you lose 3 middle linebackers, then he might be your guy. Look, should they kick the tires on this? 100%. Like, does he have any juice left in him? I don't know, but he had 86 solo tackles last year. He had 2 interceptions last year. Like, his PFF grade was like a 56. Yeah, his pass rush grade was 78. Are you telling me you can't have a middle linebacker by committee with Kirksey and how do you say his last name? Christian Kirksey?
Christian Kirksey, yeah.
Him and Terrell Bernard. You can't have a little kind of mix and match there. And I don't know how ideal it is, but if you have like the veterans you have with Milano, Hyde, and Porter, I think you're okay with that. It's not we don't have a bunch of young guys in the secondary. Why not give it a little bit of a year, 1 year deal? Obviously, be one and see what he got. If he has nothing left in the tank, it's not going to cost you anything. He's not breaking the bank. He just got cut by the Houston Texans.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. If it's Kirksey or not, I think there's options that are going to be out there with all these. If people in here don't know, they're doing 1 cut down day instead of like 3 separate ones. Usually they cut down to like 80, then 70, and then they go down to like 53. Maybe a little different. But there was 3 cut down days. Now they're doing it all at once. The Bills said they wanted to do it in waves. I was kind of surprised. Like today, at this moment, I don't think any bills have been cut today. I know there was a little wave yesterday, but yeah, I don't think there's anyone been released today. I know Jay Sternberger, Aitman, who had a flash there, was another guy released by the Bills in the receiver room. So yeah, they've made some cuts. And Roy, let's stick with this middle linebacker discussion because we're here, and then we can get kind of back to the game and a couple more of my thoughts. Roy Collins with a great question: would you cut Dotson and/or Klein if they sign a vet linebacker? I'll start with this one, and then you can, maybe add on to it or maybe take it a wholly different direction, Peter. Who knows? Maybe you're like, I love AJ Klein or something. But I did not have AJ Klein making my 53-man roster. Originally, this was back before they had the possibility of adding someone. I thought they would go Spector, Matakevich, Dodson, Bernard, and then there was a couple. I'm blanking on a couple more, but I did not think AJ Klein was making this roster. And I'm still kind of that belief. I know he's been getting some reps more and more kind of with the first team, but I just don't believe that AJ Klein is good. But I don't know. It's hard because it's like 2 bad candidates. Who's worse, Dodson or Klein? It's kind of like you don't really have like a good option. So I would not be surprised if Dodson was cut just because of, like you said, Peter, he has the veteran presence. He's been here, even though it's only been like 4 years. He's undrafted. He's been in the system. They re-signed him this year. I'd be surprised if they were to let go Dodson, but Klein, not so much. I didn't have him making the roster. So if you want to add to that, go ahead.
I would be so shocked if they cut Tyrell Dodson. Like, I love how that was like a thing like a week ago. Like, oh, we're cutting like we're going into the season with Bernard, Spector, and Klein. I guess if you add a veteran, but at that point they had it. You're cutting Klein if you're going to cut someone. The problem is right now you have the Spector injury, and it's not like a problem who's starting because I don't think Spector was ever going to start. But you have a depth issue right there where you can still bring in Christian Kirksey. Let's say that's the guy. Then you have Bernard, Dodson. Are they keeping 5 middle linebackers? 5? How many linebackers do we keep?
Well, they'll keep Milano, Bernard. Dodson, Matakevich for special teams.
4. That's 4.
Spector.
That's 5.
And then if they go the Klein route, you could go Klein.
Sure. I think right now you probably put Spector on the short-term IR, the IR.
Okay.
So he misses the first because they say he's gonna be out a couple weeks, right? Like
week to week.
I'd probably just get him on he misses the first 4 games. It's not really that big of a deal. Keep Klein and then bring in a veteran linebacker. And then once Spector comes back, you get rid of Klein. I don't think Klein is like a veteran.
We're missing one. Thank you, Dad. Dorian Williams. What the heck?
I forgot about Dorian Williams.
You know what? He was out against the Bears. I thought he had a really good preseason, just to touch on that. And if we really want to get into this conversation, I really do think there's a plan or maybe a path for Dorian Williams to say, and I tweeted this out. I'm worried right now about the middle linebacker position. They don't have kind of a feasible option there. I don't think there's a true starting middle linebacker currently right now on this roster as of Monday night. That could change tomorrow if they add someone or if they find a guy. I don't know if that may be a true middle linebacker starter, but Dorian Williams, I think there is a path for that guy to be the starter in late November, early December. I think he has the range. He has the speed. His processing needs to get a little bit better. I think he needs to learn some more things in an NFL defense. I think at Tulane, it was kind of a limited defensive scheme where you're not learning as much. You're not learning the language that the Bills are using. You're being taught to play the position differently. I think there's a real chance Dorian Williams is in the plans as middle linebacker. I know they've went back and forth with it. He's worked at weak side, but I really do think there's maybe a path for the Bills to get Dorian Williams on the field at middle linebacker by the end of the year, not now.
When he was drafted, I was like, this guy's going to be a starting middle linebacker for us because he played 70% of his snaps at Tulane at the inside linebacker position. It's 100% a little bit of a different scheme than he was playing, like you said, at Tulane than he is playing with the Bills. But I think he has all the tangibles to be that guy. I'm a little annoyed that they didn't give him a full shot at it. They kind of did. They kind of didn't. They really didn't. So that was kind of annoying. It's a little too late right now. But they could have added a veteran linebacker back in April, March, or during free agency, and they didn't. And they had they didn't have the money to add a guy for $15 million, but then they had the money to add a guy for $5 to $6 million. And they kind of chose not to. So unless they really believe in Terrell Bernard, and if they do and they're right, then we're okay. And then week 1 against the Jets, we're not talking about this. But it still gives me a little uneasiness that there's a chance Terrell Bernard's starting with no true veteran option behind him. And I was like, it still shocks me that they went into the season, off season, or going into preseason, and then potentially the season at this point with Terrell Dodson being your veteran guy, along with AJ Klein. So it's Terrell Bernard's job if he plays and he's kind of doesn't have to be a superstar, but if he kind of sparks a little, the Bills are okay. But I don't know. I do think Dorian Williams has a future at middle linebacker. I just wish they kind of gave him a little bit more of a reps in the summer because it would be a little easier if they went to that transition week 6 of the season.
Right, I agree. I'm just going through right now. So these were the middle linebackers signed in the offseason. Okay. Just kind of, I know Eric Kendricks, $13 million. That's out of the price range. But these are the guys that Bills, the veterans that Peter's talking about. Bobby Wagner, 1 year, 5.5. Sorry, Levante David, 1 year, $4.5 million. Mm-hmm. Devin Bush, 1 year, $3.5 million. Denzel Perriman, 1 year, 2.6. Corey Littleton, 2.4. On these are all 1 year contracts. Ezekiel Turner, 1 year. Zach Cunningham, 1 year. Miles Jack, who just retired. So there were options, Peter, at the middle linebacker position if they wanted to go that route.
They did,
and that's something that maybe we'll be discussing at the halfway point of the season if they can't figure it out and it's costing them games or they're not the same defense and they're struggling a bit more. But the right tackle conversation, I've kind of looked at the free agents for that. I don't really know if there was a play there, with the cap situation and stuff like that.
Well, the tackle situation, there's not enough good offensive linemen in the NFL. There's a shortage. There's a shortage of offensive linemen. It's always been like that. Teams aren't releasing good starting caliber tackles. They're not just you know what? We don't really need an average starting tackle. No, you kind of do because not every team has enough. The tackle situation is kind of sketchy. It's kind of scary. The right tackle position is a little scary. It's a much different than the injury with Connor McGovern at the left guard position because even if McGovern misses week 1 or week 2, Bates is more than capable of playing the left guard position. And I think David Edwards was pretty good this camp. So the Bills are great at the guard position. That tackle position, they're going to be rolling out David Questenberry and Ryan Vandermark, who had a great summer, but we're talking about an undrafted guy. It's a scary situation at right tackle for the Bills.
Yeah, I'm going to mention a guy today. Cam Marino, a Packers reporter, tweeted, Packers tackle Yosh Nijman is a name to watch in the trade block per source. So I did a little bit of research on him. He's 27 years old, 6'7". The Packers have great tackle depth. I think they're set, so I think he's a guy that could be released or traded. Nijman had 48 pass blocking snaps in the preseason, allowed 0 pressures, according to PFF. And he's played in 50 games in his career, started in 21, and he's came into the league in 2019 as a UDFA. That's maybe a guy that, hey, look, let's swing a trade for him or let's go sign him. That's another option that can be added to the mix.
So he went to Virginia Tech, so I'm a huge Virginia Tech football fan. So I remember him at Virginia Tech, and he was just a specimen of a man. It just, in college, he probably didn't have the right development because he was so big and wasn't kind of in his body, if that makes any sense. If you look at it, if we're going up PFF, and you can hate PFF, you can love PFF, I don't care. I'm not the biggest PFF guy, but I'm one of those people like I'll give you and I'll tell you the context. His pass blocking grade 74.4 from last year. He's better than Spencer Brown, or what Spencer Brown has been in the NFL. It's an upgrade if you trade for him. So it's one of those guys where you do send a pick. You send a pick. You do something like that where you can get him for a day 3 pick. How many 6th-round picks do we have next year? Like, how many picks do we need? Go get a guy that can play right tackle. He's played at the left tackle. He's had 200 career snaps at left tackle and 555 at right tackle. So you have like that versatility with an injury to Dawkins if that happens. These are one of those guys where like you go ship off a 5th. A guy that could maybe potentially be your future right tackle, or a guy that can help you win a Super Bowl because he can anchor that right side of the line.
Yeah, it's hard for me because I'm not ready to give up on Spencer Brown. I don't think he's had I don't think he's had that bad of a training camp. And I'm not saying you are, Peter, but just for myself.
No, I know.
Yeah, he's not a guy for me that has struggled so badly that I'm like, oh my gosh. Now it is my biggest concern just because of the lack of depth. I think his back injury, the Spencer Brown back injury, is kind of more concerning to me at 6'7". You've had those back issues. You had that one day at camp where I thought, I forgot who tweeted it. Maybe it was Joe Marino, but he mentioned that Spencer Brown
it was Marino.
couldn't even stand up with his helmet and stuff like that. He ended up being fine and played in the blue and red scrimmage. But there is a concern for me on the injury front on the tackle position. The left side, I think, is fine. I think Dawkins is a pro's pro. I think he's not amazing. I don't think he's elite. I think he's an above average offensive tackle in the league. And that's kind of where I'm at with him. But yeah, I mean, the Spencer Brown, do they get depth? I think they're definitely looking. I think it's a name that they go after. Anybody but Questenberry, Roy Collins says. But I want to get back to this before we get too deep into the roster stuff, because there are some more things to talk about with that. I think there's some sneaky guys that can get on and some stuff we can talk about there. I wanted to go back to this Bills-Bears game really quick. Just a couple more guys and your thoughts on them, Peter. I think this was the most we've seen from Deontay Hardy all preseason in terms of his usage, his production. I thought he had a really good game out of the slot. I thought they used him in the short passing game quite well. I think he had some good separation. I liked what I've seen. I liked what I've seen from him, and I liked what I saw on Saturday. So he's a guy that, again, will he be the wide receiver 3? I think Khalil Shakir has put himself down the depth chart. I know he's dealing with an injury right now, but just the inconsistencies. He'll wow you one play, and then the next play you're kind of like, what's going on here? With him. So he's just been too inconsistent, and he's kind of been like that since college. So that's something that may be carrying over to the NFL. And then you have a Trent Sherfield, who I think, again, is consistent, but I think he offers more of that position versatility. He's able to block on the boundary in the slot. So Peter, your take on kind of the slot position and your take on the wide receiver 3 spot, how do you feel those 3 guys I mentioned are doing this year, or this offseason? Sorry.
I think the wide receiver 3 spot is a revolving door between 2 people. I think it's like the Deontay Hardy show and the Trent Sherfield show. I'm not going to put Khalil Shakir in that because I don't think he's earned the right to be. And I was a huge Khalil Shakir guy when they drafted him. I was like, this guy's a steal. He should have been a day 2 pick. He fell into day 3. But he hasn't proven. Now he's obviously dealing with an injury, but he hasn't proven to be consistent enough, like you said, AJ. I like what they have in Hardy and Sherfield because they both offer totally different things. I totally might not be the right word, but they offer different things. Like Deontay Hardy's more of that gadget guy. And I hate using the word gadget guy because he always goes back to Isaiah McKenzie, who I liked Isaiah McKenzie, but he never lived up to like the status that I think Bills fans kind of put on him, and maybe that the team put on him, and maybe that's just not who he is and who he was, and that's not fair to him. But I think Deontay Hardy's a much better version of what Isaiah McKenzie was for the Bills, and I think they're going to use him in different ways. You can obviously put him in the slot, you can put him in the backfield. You can do end around, screen passes, use his speed to your ability. I do like Trent Sherfield on the outside. I think he gives you that kind of difference maker on the outside. And you also mentioned slot receiver. I think we got to throw in Dalton Kincaid because they're going to use 2 tight end sets. I don't know if that's a true slot receiver, but there's a chance where there's formations of Kincaid with Knox, and then you have Davis and Diggs. I guess Kincaid's the slot receiver if you're playing that game. He really isn't, but he factors in. They have a lot more versatility than they did last year. There's a lot of guys that can do different things. I think Hardy and Sherfield are going to have good – they're each going to switch off in those type of games. Like one guy's going to have a great game. Like they're both not going to have outstanding games each game unless the Bills are throwing for 500 yards. This is not how the NFL works. But they both offer different things, and I think that's great. But I do think Shakir is probably he's probably a step behind. I don't think he's going to get cut. They're not going to cut him. It's a second year. Like, you're not going to cut a guy that was drafted. They're not going to draft a guy that is in the second year of his rookie contract. And they vested a fourth-round pick on him. They're not doing that.
Yeah, Khalil Shakir ain't going anywhere. I think he's a lock. John Robert makes a good point. Maybe he does end up on the IR because of his injured ribs. Excuse me. I think that might be an option for Shakir and the Bills, maybe to sneak someone on the roster. But other than that, I mean, I think we can I think all these kind of next talking points I want to get into kind of coincide with kind of the roster cut down. So I want to start with the craziest probably thing that I would be talking about right now, and something that it's kind of time to admit that I think Christian Benford might be the best cornerback opposite Trey White week 1. And hear me out here. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if Dane Jackson is going to be like that consistent guy that stays so consistent when he gets his opportunities throughout the year that he's able to get the CB2 job back. Because I think he has, like I said, I think throughout the whole preseason and training camp, I think he has been the more consistent guy and the guy getting the most reps with the first team. But, man, Christian Benford, again, making a late push right when practice starts getting close to the public. The next thing you know, he's out with the ones in the preseason game. Like, wow, like that is just astonishing. I thought he was the third cornerback on the depth chart basically most of the training camp when I was there. He was the guy getting the second and third team reps. He was not getting any with the first team. It was all Kaiir Elam and Dane Jackson. So, man, and then he goes out there on the Bills and Bears game and has that great rep with great coverage. I mean, if you want to if you're teaching a kid how to play cornerback like 8 years old and you're like, hey, this is how you do it. Show that clip of Christian Benford, got his head turned around, very physical at the point of attack, stay with him the whole way, hip on hip, turned, batted the ball down, great pass breakup on third down, got him off the field. I mean, dude, Christian Benford, again, 6th round pick. And I put it out the tweet and I've had 80,000 replies about how Kaiir Elam, it actually shows that Kaiir Elam's the bust and that and all this stuff about Kaiir Elam. I get it. But Peter, just give me your thoughts on the CB2 battle and just is Christian Benford the guy?
With the CB2 battle, I want to put it out here. I don't think anybody's getting moved. I don't want to see like that on Twitter right now is that they're not trading Kaiir Elam for 1 cent on the dollar or whatever it would be, because it's just his value is not where it was when they drafted in the first round. The CB2 battle, it's one of the craziest battles I think we've seen in recent memory that I can obviously remember at the moment. Him coming out with the ones could mean a couple different things. Some people said, are they showcasing him for a trade? I don't think that's an option. Or do they know what they have in Dane Jackson? And do they want to see more of Christian Benford? Yes, that can be correct. And Christian Benford can still also win the job. They still know what they have in Dane Jackson, but they want to see more in Christian Benford. I don't know if I feel like I'm going to get bit by this, right? I feel like you and I are both going to get bit by this, or a lot of people are, because everyone's saying Christian Benford's CB2 at this point. And if he is and he pops, it's a great pick by Brandon Beane. It's a 6th round pick that turns into a starting caliber corner. And what is up with Bills and late round corners or undrafted corners, Levi Wallace, Dane Jackson, and Christian Benford? We should just stop taking corners early and take them all in the 7th round. But I don't think this means Kaiir Elam's a bust. There's something institutionally wrong with how they're developing Kaiir Elam. This is kind of what I went on a hunch. This guy went from a man system to a completely different system in the NFL. And they have not shown him, I guess, the ropes. The one thing that annoys me about Kaiir Elam, he has, one, I think he's way more talented than Christian Benford. And 2, he makes more flashy plays. He makes those bigger plays. And I think he was pretty good in coverage last year when he played. But there's just some times where he's grabbing or he looks lost, doesn't know the play. And you cannot have that with the expectations for this team, with the caliber defense this team has. And for some reason, the 6th round kid from Villanova, an FCS school, not even an FBS, talking about Kaiir Elam, a 4 or 5 star recruit from Florida, versus Christian Benford, who was recruited by nobody to go play FCS football at Villanova. It's a crazy alternative like we're living right now. But I'm buying the smoke, the hype, the everything. But I have a bad feeling not a bad feeling. there's a good chance we see Dane Jackson week 1 rolling out with Trey White, but it might not mean anything. It might be CB2 by committee, and that's totally okay. You don't have to have, if whoever's playing at the time is playing well, who cares if they're rotating guys? And if, like, you know what, Christian Benford, Dane Jackson starts, he struggles his first series, Christian Benford comes on and plays great. Yeah, it's great. Or they go Kyer, he plays great. It matters what you do in the regular season, obviously, but if I had to bet, is it, I don't know if I want to say, is it Benford walking out there with the ones Monday Night Football? It might be. We're much closer to that than we were a couple weeks ago, when Christian Benford was nowhere near in this competition anymore.
Yeah, I'll say this: the depth at CB2 is the best it's ever been. It's a great problem to have. I go along with Vinny T here in the comments. The more quality DBs you can have, the better. The Elam problem is a luxury. 100% agree. For all 24 of you in here, thank you for tuning in. It's been a great show so far. We've got a bit more to get to. Please like, subscribe, share. I greatly appreciate that. But get into the Kyer Elam kind of conversation. I don't think he's a bust yet. And I've kind of I'm like, okay, what would make Kyer Elam a bust? Like, in my mind, I'm like, what kind of would do that, right? First off, he's 22 years old. He's only 22 years old. So that's like the first thing. He has 2 more years on a rookie contract. They have the 5th-year option. He's going to be 25 when that comes. There's still a lot of time to develop. 2, Dane Jackson is on a 1-year deal. Next year, he's probably not going to be back, especially if he balls out. They're not going to be able to afford a Dane Jackson to come back on that roster. So now you're looking at Elam and Benford there, unless they add someone in free agency. So you have that kind of going for Elam. I think he can be able to kind of rejuvenate, or at least kind of develop his game the next couple of years here, maybe with Dane Jackson out of the picture, and see what he can do. I don't think Kyer Elam's a bust until this. He either doesn't make the 53-man roster, which that's not happening. Like, I think he's still a lock. I think McDermott said it's an open battle still at the CB2, which he said all offseason. So there's that. If he doesn't make a 53-man roster with the Bills, he's a bust. That's bust material. Or if he goes to another team and can't figure it out, or is a practice squad guy, or he finishes his career with the Bills, if next year's his last year, something like that. Until that, I think there is still a chance for Elam to get better. And I'm rooting for the kid because I think he does have the confidence. Like, Peter, when he was on your show, he exudes confidence, and it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, but I also think maybe he's overthinking too many things, or maybe he's putting too much pressure on himself to do the right thing, and then that's causing him to do the wrong thing. There's a couple of things with Elam, his tackling, Dane Jackson and Christian Benford, way better tacklers than Kyer Elam, as of right now. No, I'm not saying that it can change, or that's something that Kyer Elam is just always going to be bad at, but there is he's not a bust yet. He needs a couple more years, I think, to develop and see what they can bring. And I still think he can be a contributor to the team this year. But I think there's a red flag on being hey, did Brandon Beam? I think you can ask the question. You can pose the question. Did Brandon Beam? Should have Brandon Beam have drafted Kyer Elam in the first round and traded up for him? I think that's kind of should they have? That's the question you have to ask yourself right now.
You know what's frustrating about Elam in this situation? One, and he was on my show, and he was a great guy. So I'm always super careful of what I say about it, because that's not how it should be. But the guy took time out of his day to come on my show, which is crazy. He's an NFL player. So I obviously don't want to be that guy and not criticize him for doing something bad, but you also want to be respectful, because he's also a human being at the end of the day. There is something, he is way more. I said it before. It's not like the talent isn't there. The talent is there. We have seen flashes where he looks like a lockdown corner. It just, there's something missing there. Is it, like you said, overthinking? Is he playing too aggressive? We've seen him play too aggressive, too handsy at times, but he doesn't need to be. Should we have traded up? Probably not. It's not looking great for that move at the moment. Do we, AJ, do we forget this move if Christian Benford turns into not saying a star, but a top 10, a top 5, top 10 CB2, where you're Taron Johnson level of he's really good and we have to pay him eventually, not to be a CB1, but he's very good at CB2, and you're just in your mind, let's flip the switch that they were drafted in different spots. Just do that and see what happens there. It's not the best situation, but if Benford pops and looks like a star and turns into one, or turns into a really good player, you're gonna forget about Kyer really fast. And it's sad but it's the truth of where the NFL is. I don't know. Like, he has so much potential, Kyrie. Like, it's crazy, and you see the talent. There's something missing that when the Bills drafted him, from the higher ups, like the general manager, assistant GM, the scouting department, to the coaching staff. There's something missing there. Maybe there isn't. Maybe it's the player. But I feel like there's something missing there. They're just not using him right, or they're not coaching him in the right way, because you traded up for a guy that never really played in a zone scheme. And Brandon B knows what scheme Sean McDermott runs. This isn't like brand new stuff. They've been doing this for multiple years. And then they went with a guy that doesn't fit that scheme. It was an interesting pick at the time, but you're like, it's going to work. Because Brandon Beane has a pretty good track record of drafting, even though some people want to disagree with me. But I don't know. There's something not right there in the relationship with either Kyrie and the coaching or coaching in the organization, just on the Kyrie side of it.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, a combination of himself too. Like, I think there's a lot of factors. Like, it's definitely, I think, himself and how he's playing, and then obviously I think the coaching staff and their development with him, or with John Butler and how he feels about the player and stuff like that. But let's move on to the offensive line. I think we really did a good job discussing the CB2 battle, kind of where we're at. Again, I think it's too soon to call Elam a bust, and if Benford turns out to be, a top 10 cornerback too, you're not really talking much about. And Trey White's getting older. So, like, there does need to be that developmental guy. Like, who knows, man? Like, Trey White coming off an ACL injury, I know he's bound to have a great comeback year, and he's the guy that most Bills fans, he's one of the fan favorites in terms of Bills players, because he was like the first McDermott draft pick, and he's been here for a while, and he's been an all-pro corner. But, like, he's getting older, and Elam and Benford are kind of the two waiting in the wing. Is there something there that maybe one of them can break apart, become the CB1 in a couple of years when Trey White's done? I know that's rolling in the future, but it's just too soon right now. We don't know anything, and let's just be grateful that they have the depth at that CB2 position to not have to really worry about it too much moving forward. So let's go offensive line, Peter. Do you have like a group of guys that you think are going to make the roster? Do you have like a 9 or 10 guys that that are going to make it? Because if not, before you get started, I will go ahead with my 9 or 10. Obviously, Dawkins, McGovern, Morris, Bates, Brown. If McGovern's not in the IR with that injury, those are the 5. And then I think you have Bates. Sorry, I already mentioned Bates. I think you have Torrance, who's a starting right guard. So you have Bates, as the kind of backup center, backup whatever you want him to be, because he brings that versatility. Now this is where it gets trouble, because I think David Edwards is a lock. I mean, he's that guard depth. So there's 7. So you have 7 right there. You're probably going to keep 9 or 10. I think Alec Anderson. Now this might be crazy, but I think Alec Anderson. They played him at right tackle. He had that bad rep where he loved the strip sack with Kyle Allen, but Kyle Allen was in the pocket for a while for one, and his PFF grade, I think you treated it out. I think it was like top 5, like on the offense.
Yeah, I can go back to the tweet, but I think it was.
It was like 80, low 80s or something.
Second or third in the whole team offensively. Let me pull it up right now. But no, I think it was third on the Bills offense at 81.7, just behind Quentin Morris, great game, and then Josh Allen.
Right. So there you go. Like, I think he played center, he's played guard, and he's played tackle. So like, I think that's a very valuable, again, depth guy. I think he plays a nasty game. I know a couple people that know him personally. He brings the nasty. Like, he's one of those guys that takes care of guys like no problem. I think he has that. So there's 8. So if Alec Anderson, so you got Ike Bodger, Nick Broker, Richard Garage, Greg Mance, David Quessenberry, and Ryan Vandermark for 2 spots, or maybe 1. I'm going to go with Vandermark and Garage. That's just my first kind of guess at this. I think, because obviously Tommy Doyle, terrible, awful injury. Hope he gets better. But those are my 10. How do you feel about it?
Did I miss you? Repeat the 10 again, because I feel like I
missed.
Okay,
so the first 5. So Torrance, Brown, Morris, all those guys, McGovern, and Dawkins. Then I go Edwards and Bates.
Edwards and Bates, yep, that's 7.
Alec Anderson,
8.
Garage, and Vandermark,
9 and 10.
That's if they keep 10. That's if they keep.
You're not keeping Quessenberry.
No.
So that's where I would disagree. I think they keep 10. I'm looking at. I have my own, but I'm looking at Perino's right now just to have all the
reference.
Yeah, just have all the players in my head. So Perino had them keep it 9. I think Perino wrote this before I start bashing. No, I'm joking. But yeah, Perino, he wrote this. Yeah. So he kept 9. I think I agree with his 9. I'd throw Alec Anderson at 10. So my 10 would be Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, Ryan Vandermark, David Questenberry, Mitch Morse, McGovern, Torrance, David Edwards, Ryan Bates, and then Alec Anderson that 10th. I don't think they keep Ike Bucker. I know people have liked Ike Bucker in the past. I do think you can get him on the practice squad. Mm-hmm. You can get a Richard Garage on the practice squad, in my opinion.
Okay.
I think they like the veteran presence of David Questenberry.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's the right move, but
right.
I'm trying to think of what the Bills would do. Nick Broker's kind of annoying because he's a day 3 pick. He's one of those guys. You want those guys to make the roster, but at the end of the day, if Vandermark makes the roster and Broker doesn't really matter. Kevin Jarvis, and they already cut Garrick McGinn. Yesterday they cut him, but I do think Alec Anderson's that 10th guy. I do. That's where it's. I think so. You're going a little different. I feel like most people would go where I'm going, and
right.
Either, either go back to 9.
Yeah.
Either go back to 9 and get rid of Alec Anderson, and definitely get rid of Richard Garage. But you went to 10 and kept Garage and got rid of Questenberry. I hope none of this matters, that they add another guy in, so it doesn't matter. We're not talking about David Questenberry having to make this roster.
Right.
They add a veteran swing tackle, but I like Alec Anderson's versatility. They love versatility.
Yes, and
they love versatility.
And John Robert here in the comments, I don't like Questenberry. Like, he's just a guy. Like, dude, I've seen him enough.
He's not good, but there's not a lot of good. Like, the depth offensive linemen don't exist really.
Right.
Unless you find a sleeper day 3 that no one knows about, and he flourishes. But like, I don't know. I think it's 10. I think you have to keep 10.
Let's go D-line. Let's go D-line. D-line. So I'm going to go again. I'll start. Obviously, Rousseau, Ed, Daquan, Vaughn, Epinesa, Leonard Floyd, Tim Settle. Now, this is where it gets tough because, so I haven't named these players yet. I think Boogie Basham's also a lock, so I'll put him in there. So that's 7. Or that's 8, sorry. So Boogie, AJ, Tim Settle, Leonard Floyd. Poona Ford's a lock too, so that's 9. So do they keep 10 and do they keep one of Eli Anku, Shaq Lawson, and Jordan Phillips? It's kind of 3 guys, 1 spot. It's hard because I can't see them. It would be so surprising for them to cut Phillips and Shaq just because of what they bring to the team. I think the leadership, I think they really have enjoyed those guys being on that roster. They played their best football on the Buffalo Bills roster, no question. So, Peter, if that were you, say that those are the 9 locks. I'm not even going to give you – I'm just going to ask you a hypothetical straight-up question right now. You have to answer it. That's the 9 right there. Is Poona Ford, Tim Settle, AJ Epinesa, Boogie Basham, Ed Oliver, Rousseau, Von Miller, if he makes the active – if he's not on PUP, Daquan Jones, and then Leonard Floyd. If those are the 9, if Von Miller makes it, and that's the 9. Jordan Phillips, Shaq Lawson, or Eli Anku, who you keeping?
Jordan Phillips, Shaq Lawson, or Eli Anku?
Yes.
Kingsley Jonathan.
Kingsley Jonathan.
Shaq Lawson.
Okay.
I don't think Jordan Phillips makes this roster.
Okay.
And I don't think Eli Anku's in that.
He's practice squad. Squad.
Yeah. I don't think Jordan Phillips makes this roster. I'm looking at Perino's right now. Just for a reference, he has Kingsley Jonathan making the roster. But he put Von Miller on the pup.
Right. So that opens up a spot.
So he keeps 10. So when you hear his 10, he puts Von Miller on pup, so it opens up a spot. But he kept 9 offensive linemen. And we kept 10.
Okay.
So we have to keep 9 offensive linemen for playing kind of that kind of game.
Right.
We kept Rousseau, Leonard Floyd, Boogie Basham, AJ Epinesa, and Kingsley Jonathan. Then he kept Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Tim Settle, Jordan Phillips, and Poona Ford. That's 10. With Von Miller on the pup. If we're playing Von Miller not on the pup, I think we have to keep 9.
Right.
And you just substitute Von for Kingsley off the roster, and Jordan Phillips off the roster.
Interesting stuff. I like it. I think it's a great conversation to have.
Would you keep Kingsley Jonathan over Shaq Lawson?
Oh my God, man. It's like I don't know if the Bills would. Would I? I'm not even sure if I would. I know he's had a couple good pass rush moves. I know he had one against the Bears. He almost got to the quarterback and got home. I like what I've seen from him, but I still am going to lean Shaq Lawson just because of the fact that I think he sets the edge in the run game. I think he's a guy when you have a rotation, when you want a rotational third defensive end or fourth defensive end or whatever, he would be fifth defensive end. He's a guy that you can count on, and he's kind of that guy that's been there. I think he also brings that energy. Like, I think he's a guy that gets the team going. I think players like him. He's always in the middle of like scuffles. Like if there's a scuffle going on, Shaq Lawson is the first dude like running at it, like break it up or like trying to get involved. So I like what he brings that. But I would lean Shaq just because of his presence and Kingsley Jonathan not making the roster. But hey, if Kingsley Jonathan makes the roster, I would be surprised, but I do like what he brings, and I think he's a young guy that has great speed to power, and he's continued to kind of improve that in his career.
It's interesting. I don't know, and like Jordan Phillips is also that type of guy that brings the energy, brings the locker room presence, a veteran guy. But how many roster spots can you keep with those type of guys without not trying to maximize talent or production? And minus injury with Jordan Phillips, I don't know. Kingsley Jonathan keeping 10, and then obviously you would cut Kingsley Jonathan when Von Miller comes back. I feel like that would be the move. I don't know. I do think they keep 9 though. I think they keep 9. If we think 10 offensive linemen.
Do you think Von do you think he's on the PUP to start the year?
They're pushing it. Like they're waiting to the last minute. Does that mean it's more of a chance he's on the 53? If that's what that means? The problem is, but like if he was already going to be on PUP, why wouldn't he just be? Or it's just basically just a roster decision to try to roster balance it. I guess he hasn't played, he hasn't practiced. Or we're 2 weeks out. Are we saying Von Miller should be ready for week 1, or do they think he's ready for week 2?
That's what I'm thinking, Peter.
And they want to make him healthy and active. If you want to do that, then he's not going on PUP. If they don't want to make him miss basically all of September, 4 games. But are they okay with having Von Miller out for 4 games where they think it's the best and they can trust this defensive line? You brought in Leonard Floyd for a reason. So,
yeah,
I don't know. I didn't give you an answer. I didn't give you an answer. I kind of floated around that question. I didn't give you an answer. I have no idea. It's one of those things like I feel like people that tell you they know, they don't know. It's just one of those things where, look, if I had to place all my money in one spot, he probably goes on PUP.
I'm like 80-20.
That's what I'm probably. I'm holding out hope he plays week 1. I think it's more hope than me using my brain.
Yeah, I'm like 80-20 PUP for Von. I think there's an 80% chance he does, go on the PUP, but there's that 20% part of me that okay, the dude's a freak of nature. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's returned from an ACL early in his career very fast. I know it's 10 years later or whatever it is, almost 10 years later, and bodies change and stuff like that. But if Von can get back out there, that'd be great. I think it's more of like a week 5, week 6 return, probably more likely week 6. I think a Giants Sunday Night Football at home would be kind of cool to see him return that week. But Peter, it's been a really fun show. We kind of went through the offensive line, defensive line, the CB2 battle. I think Torrance has kind of locked up that right guard battle, so not too much to say there. No. And then, just the Bills-Bears recap, what we thought from the players on the field during that game, just a couple of names. We talked about Gabe Davis, Quentin Morris, and a couple others. So, Peter, thanks for having me on. Plug what you do. Plug what you got going on, where you can find you on Twitter, every social media platform if you'd like. And go ahead.
Yeah, AJ, I appreciate you having me on. It's always fun talking Bills. But yeah, you guys can follow me at DiBiase Peter. It's right on the screen. But if you want to listen to audio, DiBiase Peter on Twitter. And then, I work for Built in Buffalo. I host my show with Lance Nelson Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on either the Built in Buffalo Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter network. And then obviously you can listen to the audio. So yeah, do that as well. So yeah, Built in Buffalo, 8 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays.
Okay, before we go, we're gonna do the safety stuff. Roy Collins is like no comments on the safety battle. So let's look at the safeties real quick. Taylor Rapp lock, Jordan Poyer lock, Micah Hyde lock, DeMar Hamlin lock. Do they go Saran Neal? Saran Neal. I mean, Saran Neal's probably. I'm not gonna say he's 100% lock, but
I know I've been using Perino's article, but it's a good point of reference, and he's obviously a little more intact with what the Bills are doing than you and I, even though we both do a great job. He has Saran Neal as the 6th cornerback making the roster. And then he has 5 safeties, that 5th safety being Cam Lewis.
Look, I would not be surprised. They love Cam Lewis. Now, I think he may be a practice squad candidate, but I also think he might get poached because I think he's shown things and people have noticed. He's kind of like not making a name for himself, but I think he has made some plays in multiple preseason games and some NFL action. I wouldn't be shocked if Cam Lewis makes the roster. And Kevin Masseri from Cover One kind of brought up maybe they're going to keep Cam Lewis and get rid of Saran Neal just because Cam Lewis can kind of play that Saran Neal position, like in special teams and stuff like that. But I don't know if Cam Lewis is ready for that. And it saves money because Saran Neal would save like $3.3 million or something like that. I think Saran Neal's a lock. I don't think he's going anywhere.
They love Saran Neal.
Yeah, they love Saran Neal. He does it all. He can play every position.
And they love special teams, and he's incredible at special teams. Like you said, he can play safety, he can play inside slot corner. But 11 guys there. We're talking corners and safeties, and they would cut like a Dean Marlowe, Jared Maiden, Zane Anderson. And they actually brought Zane Anderson early in on the free agency process.
What was he like? Was he like a March, April signing?
Yeah, like an early March, April. It was one of those weird ones where it was like, oh, maybe this guy's something. Not, but and then obviously, you know what the tough cut they have here, Perino has in the corners and makes sense, and hopefully you can get him back on the practice squad. Jamarcus Ingram. Yeah, Jamarcus Ingram has played pretty well. It's just for the sake of that guy trying to make a roster spot, he's probably playing on one of the hardest positions in the league to make a roster spot right now. When people are talking about trying to trade Kyrie Elam, how's Jamarcus Ingram supposed to make the roster? So he's a guy you want back on practice squad, in my opinion. Yeah,
so the safety battle for me again, like I'm not really like D. Marlowe, I think's gone. I think Zane Anderson's gone. Cam Lewis, does he sneak in? Is he that guy? Is he able to play multiple positions?
He's the one like interesting topic. I don't think it's that interesting, the safety topic conversation. I think it's pretty like straightforward.
Right. All right, guys. Well, all 22 of you in here, thank you for tuning in. It's been a fun show. And look, tomorrow's going to be fun. Make sure to stay updated to my Twitter at Ajay Sobalski. It's going to be a fun day in terms of just NFL news, stuff like that. And we'll see what the Bills do if they make any moves for a veteran tackle in the trade market or in through the waivers or a middle linebacker, two of the biggest positional needs. If you're listening on audio, again, please, like that audio video and be sure to keep on listening because I greatly appreciate the audio listens. And then for all of you that joined live today, again, I greatly appreciate it. Roy, John, my dad, Chappie, Jessica, all of you guys, thank you consistently for coming in, bringing some comments, bringing some hot takes. And I will see you next week, 1 week away from Monday Night Football at 7:00. And in 2 weeks, catch me on at 7:00. Bills Jets are going on at 8:15. I'm going to do like a little 40-minute episode. So that will be very fun. Christopher, thank you for coming on. It's your host, Ajay Sobalski, with his guest, Peter DiBiase, and we will see you next time.